Check out part 1 for more Underdog runs. Link in description.
Add Finem. At the Boston Major 2016, they weren't just underdogs, they were complete nobodies. 5 Greeks, no org, no backing, no expectations. Most fans didn't even know who they were. But before the tournament started, something felt different. After barely squeaking out of the Europe qualifier group stage, Ad Finem swept both Team Secret and Team Liquid to qualify for the big stage. Ad Finem played like a team with nothing to lose. 1-2 in the group stage, then the playoffs hit. Quarterfinals versus Newbie, a top Chinese powerhouse. Everyone predicted a stomp, but Ad Finem ran straight at them. Madara, Thug, Skylark, MNT, and Spartan turned the series into a brawl, and somehow, they won. The Greeks were in the semifinals. LGD Forever Young and Digital Chaos was next. Teams that are expected to crush them, but Ad Finem refused to die. They fought tooth and nail, diving, scrapping, forcing fights that had no business working, and they made it to the grand finals of a Valve Major. Ad Finem now finds themselves in a grand final versus OG. Everyone expected the dream to finally end. OG took the first 2 games, but then came Game 3. It was one of, if not the most iconic games of the early Dota 2 Esport days. The game lasted 79 minutes long, over an hour of intense back-and-forth game. A match-point elimination game nonetheless. And this is how it ended.
No, he's not.
He is.
No, he's
he
not.
is going
no,
for
he's
it.
not. He's not. Oh, no. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. He's doing it.
My God, what a
I
game.
can't believe it.
OG won the next game and closed out the series, but it didn't matter. Ad Finem didn't lift the trophy, but they became instant legends. 5 friends from Greece, no expectations, just passion, and one of the greatest underdog runs ever seen in esports.
FunPlus Phoenix.
At the start, FPX felt more like a regional experiment than a world champion blueprint. A mid-jungle duo nobody outside China believed in. A bot lane people called inconsistent, and a mid laner who roams so much people wonder if he's even a mid-laner at all. But that strange formula started catching fire. Groups didn't begin clean, but they ended up first in their group after winning the tiebreaker versus Splice. Every Doinb roam was perfectly timed. Every Tian invade cut the map in half. FPX weren't playing Standard League. They were playing their league. They matched against Fnatic in quarters, a matchup hyped as Europe's return to glory, until FPX slammed the door shut. Fnatic's aggression evaporated under FPX's non-stop pressure. A 3-1, and it wasn't even close. Then came Invictus Gaming, the defending world champions. Tian stole games with pure jungle control. Doinb dragged his team across the map on picks nobody prepared for, and IG's title defense crumbled. G2 Esports was their final hurdle. Europe's super team, MSI champions. One best of 5 away from the elusive Golden Road, and FPX didn't blink. Game after game, they dismantled G2's creativity, smothered their early setups, and shut down the very style that made G2 feared worldwide. Tian played like a man possessed. Doinb's champion pool shredded every plan G2 had. LWX and Crisp erased bot lane pressure entirely. By the end, FPX didn't look like underdogs at all. 3 games, 3 wins. They swept G2. Tian is awarded a finals MVP, and Doinb became a legend.
The MongolZ.
For years, the Mongols lived in that strange no man's land between scary upset team and they won't actually win anything. You'd see them blast through someone at the Asia RMRs, then fall apart in the decider match. They'd stun top teams in group stages, like their breakout wins at IEM Katowice 2024 play-ins, where they punched above their rank, only to bow out early when the pressure peaked. At ESL Pro League Season 19, they stole maps off favorites, pushed elite teams to the edge, and still left the tournament with nothing to show but potential. But over 2024 and 2025, something changed. Their style got sharper. That wild aggression that once looked reckless started carving through Tier 1 setups. They stopped being a fun upset team and started being a problem. When big teams saw the Mongols in their group, they stopped smirking. Still, they hadn't won anything that proved they belonged among the giants. Every deep run ended just short, and then came EWC 2025. Vitality, stacked, polished, and terrifying, waited deep in the bracket. the kind of team MongolZ had historically stumbled against. Instead, MongolZ showed up big time. Techno 4K played like gravity didn't apply to him. Blitz's calling was perfectly tuned to the chaos his team thrived in. Senzu and 910 cracked sights with a confidence that looked unreal. And round by round, the proper Counter-Strike team became the one scrambling for answers. MongolZ beat Vitality. Clean, convincing. They reached the grand final and finished the job, lifting the trophy, completing a run nobody thought was possible years prior. The MongolZ didn't just beat a favorite, they became one.
MongolZ Esports. For months, the roster of Team Queso were a team nobody really took seriously. 3 teenagers with insane mechanics, barely any LAN experience, and no real pedigree. They were the kids people expected to flame out the moment real pressure hit. But when the 2021-22 Winter Major arrived, they proved that they were a real contender. They became the runner-up of that event, even forcing a bracket reset on G2 Esports before losing to them. Right before the major began, MongolZ Esports signed the full Team Queso roster, handing the 3 rookies a massive new banner to play under. When they fell to the lower bracket, most people counted them out, yet that's where MongolZ turned into a storm. They tore through Pioneers, survived through 2 grueling back-to-back Game 5/Game 7 against Team Liquid and SSG, and back to destroying oppositions, crushing Carmine Corp in 5 and sweeping version 1. By the time they reached the grand final, no one was dismissing them anymore. Facing Team Falcons, the hottest roster in the world, the finals became a slugfest. MongolZ grabbed the first best of 7, winning the 7th game in overtime and pushed Falcons into a bracket reset. Momentum kept swinging, the pace went nuclear, and in the final series, Rise transformed into a closer, scoring clutch goals that instantly became LAN history. From forcing a bracket reset in 7 games to sweeping Team Falcons. When the clock reaches 0 and MongolZ secured their 4th straight win, the crowd erupted. 3 rookies who weren't supposed to make top 8 lifted the trophy. After that, Joyo was awarded the Spring Major MVP, while Vatira gets the Defensive MVP. Shanghai Dragons. From a historically embarrassing 0 wins, 40 losses record in a season to a world champion, this is how Shanghai Dragons turned around and rebuilt their team from rock bottom all the way up. At the first ever Overwatch League season, Shanghai Dragons entered as one of the Pacific Division team. They lost their 2 matches in preseason, then again, and again, and again. Stage by stage, they lost all their matches. No one took them seriously. But instead of accepting that fate, Shanghai tore everything down. They rebuilt from the ashes, piece by piece, player by player. By 2020, the Dragons weren't just different, they were unrecognizable. But would the new roster be able to escape their predecessors' ghosts? Would they be able to erase their team's legacy of losses? You bet they did. The team that once couldn't win a map was suddenly playing some of the best Overwatch on the planet. Shanghai dominated tournaments, won both the May Melee and Countdown Cup, and entered the 2020 playoffs not as underdogs, but as a genuine threat to win it all. And they nearly did. The Dragons tore through the bracket, fighting their way deep into the Grand Finals weekend. But a back-to-back Game 5 losses ended their dreams. But they were not done. A year later, in 2021, they finished the journey, sweeping Atlanta Reign and lifting the Overwatch League championship that once seemed unimaginable. And even though the players were completely different, the team that used to be a laughingstock has now earned the rights to call themselves a world champion. ZETA Division. Coming into VCT Reykjavik 2022, almost no one believed in them. Japan had never made a deep international run in Valorant, and ZETA's previous global appearance ended in last place. Analysts predicted another quick exit, 0-2, maybe a few close maps if they were lucky. But once the tournament started, ZETA didn't look like the timid team from 2021. They played with a calm, methodical confidence. Depp popped off when they needed firepower. 10 brought explosive entries, and Sugar Zero quietly became one of the tournament's best anchors. ZETA weren't just surviving, they were adapting, improving, evolving in real time. And then the upsets started. First they stunned Team Liquid, one of Europe's most respected rosters. Then they took down DRX, a team considered a perennial top contender and one of the most disciplined squads in the world. Suddenly, the team everyone expected to disappear early was outclutching world-class opponents. When they faced Paper Rex, the most chaotic and aggressive team at the event, ZETA didn't crumble.
They absorbed the pressure, slowed the tempo, and beat them too. 1-1 win after another. Each series always break predictions. Another reminder that this wasn't luck. This was Japan leveling up. Though ZETA ultimately fell to Optic, the eventual champions, finishing 3rd overall. ZETA Division didn't come to Iceland as favorites. They came as underdogs, doubted by almost everyone. And their run was seismic, shattering narratives and elevating Japanese Valorant to a global stage.
Gambit Esports. At IEM Katowice 2021, one of CSGO's most prestigious events, Gambit showed up not as favorites, but as fighters. Their roster was still considered young and unproven by many. Meanwhile, standing across them in the grand final was Virtus Pro, a CIS powerhouse with legacy, experience, and a large fanbase. But despite that, even VP were underrated in this event, coming through the lower bracket themselves. Gambit's path to the final was rough. They had to battle through the play-ins. They dropped into the lower bracket in groups, but instead of folding, they just kept winning, beating major names, showing that their firepower was real. The world didn't expect this matchup in the finals, as both Gambit and VP are considered underdogs. The series started with a close loss on Vertigo, 14-16, but Gambit didn't panic. They responded on Dust 2 with a dominant 16-6. On Train, they turned the screws even tighter, blowing VP out 16-4 behind heroic entries from Hobbit. Then came Overpass, where Gambit closed the series 16-12. The entire team executed under pressure. 2 underdogs, 2 survivors, and Gambit came out on top, walking away with IEM Katowice 2021, the $400,000 top prize, and an announcement that they weren't just the young Gambit roster anymore, they were champions. Rogue, a team many counted out, not the obvious favorite. Their roster still unproven at the biggest stages, but by the Berlin Major, Rogue had the hunger that no one saw coming. When the Major began, Rogue clawed their way up. They won all their games in the first day, lost all in the second, and won all in the third, finishing 2nd in their group. In the playoffs, they faced G2 and XSET before reaching the grand final. They swept G2, though both games were very close. They reverse-swept XSET before reaching the final stage. In the grand final, they took on FaZe Clan, one of the most dominant and feared teams in Rainbow Six, having just won 6 Sweden Major 2021. The series went the full 5 maps: Border, Villa, Skyscraper, Bank, and finally Clubhouse. On the final map, Clubhouse, it was Rogue who held their nerve. In overtime, they found the breakthrough. Kanto finds a double, but FaZe retaliates, killing Leon Gids and Kanto to make it a 3 versus 3. But one by one, Rogue starts catching the remaining members of FaZe, and after killing Souls 1, Rogue stood victorious. 8-7 after a brutal, heart-stopping fight. Winning the Berlin Major gave them $200,000, 375 6 invitational points, and a place in Siege lore. For Kanto, it meant his 2nd major title, proving that persistence pays. For Meepy and Leon Gids, it was their first major championship after coming close multiple times. And for Spoit, the 18-year-old, it was a heroic debut he'll never forget.